Welcome to #Wednesdays Weekly, a weekly seminar / information session in collaboration with the voluntary sector and our public sector partners. This week, the host is Karen Williams from Community Catalysts on co-production. Over to Karen.
Hello. Right, so I'll share my screen and hope it works. Ta-da. Okay. So, as Sarah said, I'm Karen Williams and I am a community catalyst and I work across the Rochdale Borough, working with local people who have great ideas to support older people and adults with learning disability in the community and in their homes. Community Catalyst is a social enterprise and community interest company, and we've been around for about 10 years now. And we work all across the UK in partnership with local councils, community groups, health trusts, and other provider organisations. And at the heart of what we do is an aim to make sure that those people who need support with their lives have a real choice of great services and supports that are local and enable them to live a good life. And the way we do this is by harnessing the talents and the imaginations and the passions of local people and the communities where they live to provide a really high quality, small scale and local support services. When we talk about older people and adults with learning disabilities, quite often the focus is on their needs. But actually communities have so many gifted and energetic people and passionate people. And we're actually a real mix of needs and strengths. I think we've seen this particularly in recent months with coronavirus, where people have really drawn on the strengths of people that maybe they'd not gone to before or they'd not considered before, and has some really amazing outcomes. So when we just concentrate on need, it can mean that there's a sense of people and community needing to be fixed, and that these people and communities are kind of sat there quite passively waiting to be fixed. And if you flip that on its head and focus on what communities and people have and can offer and their strengths rather than what they lack, and if you help them to use that, it really does unlock so much energy and passion and creativity that can lead to so many amazing things. At the heart of what we do at Community Catalysts is co-production. And so today's session is going to be around what co-production is, what co-production isn't, why we use it and how we use it. It's not going to be all encompassing because co-production is one of those things that can mean different things, but there are some key principles that I'm going to talk about. I thought it'd be useful to start with what co-production isn't, because quite often I hear people using the word co-production, co-design, and particularly bigger organisations thinking they're doing co-production and genuinely believing they are, but actually are missing the mark a little bit. So in terms of what co-production isn't, it's not just another word for engagement. It's not about coming up with a service or an idea or a leaflet or whatever it might be and running it by people and saying, what do you think? It's not a tick box exercise. It's not about having someone with lived experience on a committee or a meeting on a board, but then not actually giving them a real voice to allow them to be heard and to share their experience and share their strengths. And it's not about a professional speaking on behalf of someone with lived experience. There's no substitute for that individual, that person to come along and actually share their strengths and share what they can offer and their knowledge. There's four main principles of co-production, and those are equality, which is around not one person or one group being more important. It's about everyone having skills and strengths that are different and they can bring to the table and should be heard and seen and used. It's about diversity and inclusivity. It's about working really hard to ensure that particularly those people with seldom heard voices have got a voice and are heard, and their skills and strengths are taken as being just as valid as anybody else's. It's about having accessibility. I think often we hear about people trying to co-produce services but not thinking about how they're doing it. So they might invite someone with lived experience to a meeting, but it might be in a time or in a place or a venue that isn't accessible. Might be difficult to get there on public transport. They might not have the funds to get there. They might be at the wrong time. So being accessible is really important when it comes to co-production. And reciprocity is also really important, being aware that those people are given a lot and making sure that they're also getting something out of the experience. It's not about kind of take. It's about listening and using their strengths, but about them getting something out of the process as well. A key part of co-production is enabling people to be equal partners right through from the design to the delivery and every kind of point in between that and beyond that. And when we talk about older people and adults with learning disability, the focus can often be on the care and support that they need, rather than the skills and assets of what they can bring, and they can often be overlooked. So for me, these 3 points here I think are really key. When you think about co-production and what co-production is, it should always come from an assets-based approach, not thinking what people need particularly, that's important, but actually what can they bring, what are their skills, what are their strengths, what knowledge do they have, what skill set do they have that can be used to input into the development of a service. And it's about working together from the very start. And that isn't about you or your service coming with an idea and thinking, right, we're going to plan this and we're going to do and then we're going to get people involved and see what they think about it. It's about working with people from the very start. If you've got an idea, get them involved, ask them, you've lived this. What do you think? What is important to you? What can you bring to this? What can you share? What knowledge do you have? Because when you share that knowledge, you share power. And that comes back to that part about things being equal and having equal partners. If you're sharing knowledge, you share that power and you get so much more back and so much more out of it by doing true co-production. So why should we do co-production? Why should we co-produce things? I think at the most basic level, it helps achieve those better outcomes for everybody. It's not just about an improved service for those accessing the service, but it's about improving the experience for those who are providing it as well. When you make the most of shared skills and assets, that can only be a good thing. If you're bringing more skills and more assets into the mix, that can only have a positive outcome. It can be challenging at first. I think when people first start doing co-production properly, it can be a bit of an eye-opener. It can take more time. It can cost more money initially because you're having to do things in a different way to how you've done them before. But overall, it generally is a more resourceful use of money because what you're doing is engaging those people that know the service inside out, know where it works, know where it doesn't work, know what they need, know what their strengths are, and it makes for a more sustainable service. And that brings about a more resilient community. So in the long term, it actually is money saving because it does involve people at every stage. Because those people with experience have that knowledge, not only to make services better for themselves, but for other people who may be in a similar situation to them. At Community Catalyst, we work with people who we define as being micro-enterprises. And micro-enterprises, by our definition, is someone who has an idea and it's going to be 8 or fewer full-time equivalents involved. So we're talking really small scale, really niche, local people providing local support in the communities where they're based. But I think what is really exciting about micro-enterprises is that they can be run by anybody. And that includes those people who might use the services themselves, their carers, their families, and other community members. And it really is a joy to see when that happens. Community enterprises at a micro level are really well placed for co-production. It can be a challenge. It can be a challenge however big you are. But I think when you're a small micro-enterprise, your mode operandi is around that personalised support and being rooted in the community, what you're wanting to work with. So co-produced services often happen quite organically, just by their very being. Micro-enterprises can be really flexible and responsive to change. And I'm going to go through an example on the next slide about someone in Rochdale who's done that during coronavirus. I think it has, as I said before, been a real opportunity for small enterprises to show how reflexive and responsive and flexible they can be. Micro-enterprises often create opportunities for people they're working with to shape the services. Quite often they set up because they've got a vested interest or an experience or a service that they have accessed themselves and want to shape it. And so by default, they will be more inclusive about who they work with and how they work with them. As I said before about equality, when you have a micro enterprise, quite often it's easy to enable people to be equal partners in that design and delivery and ongoing development and involvement of that service, because you've got those local people helping other local people. And one thing that I always try to encourage, and I think is always a real inspiration to see, is it can be a really good opportunity for those people who might historically feel marginalised in service provision and service production to actually have a go and be really involved in it. So I want to share with you one of our community enterprises, which is Creative Health and Wellbeing. And Creative Health and Wellbeing is run by Erica, who's worked, and I think is a real shining example of co-production. She's worked with Community Catalyst within our development programme. She's also worked with Sarah at Action Together. And she's really, really keen on co-producing what she does. So Erica's had an idea back a while ago, came to me last year, to provide community sessions, which were arts and crafts, for people over 50 who were feeling socially isolated. She'd done some research on when social isolation tends to start, and how you can help prevent that or help support people maybe feeling like that. She got some funding and she came up with an idea to run sessions. She didn't want to just run the sessions and presume that they were going to work. She decided to run them as a bit of market research, a co-produced idea, for people to come along to them and say what they wanted. Did they like the venue? Did they want a different venue? Did they like the idea she'd come up with? Did they want something different? Did they want to develop something they were already really good at? Did they want to learn something new? And she worked really hard and was really responsive. She changed the venue because the original venue that she had wasn't as good as it could be. She listened to feedback. She listened to what people wanted. And by March this year, she was absolutely going great guns. The sessions were at capacity. They had a regular group of people that would come in. There were new people coming. And then COVID hit and just put a kibosh on the whole situation, because obviously all the people in the community getting together just was a big no-no when lockdown happened. But in terms of being responsive and flexible, Erica really kind of sees the opportunity. And what she has done through lockdown is reinvent what creative health and wellbeing does and how it functions based on feedback from people who use the service, but also the local housing associations about what they're hearing they need, what people are telling them they need. And what Erica's done is come up with some fantastic ideas. And the two ideas that she's come up with are packs. So you can see the middle picture on the screen. She's come up with art packs, which have all the bits and pieces that you might need with some ideas on how to create art at home. She's been active on her Facebook page, come up with ideas, draw what's outside your window. And then on the back of it is from some feedback, and specifically around older people, she's come up with the Rochdale art book. And this is simply pictures she's taken of local landmarks around Rochdale, local areas that have been digitised into a colouring book. And it's for people that, the idea was to kind of, for those people who can't get out because they're shielding or whatever reason, and because of lockdown, could still connect with the local community and bring that art aspect into it. And they've both those new things have been really popular. Now, as things start to open up, she's doing some in the community, weather permitting, activities kind of come along and sketch together in the park. And she's just a really good example, I think, of where she's been responsive. She's heard what people want. She's listened to what people's strengths are and their needs. And she's been responsive to that and changed what she does. On a larger scale at Community Catalyst, I've mentioned this a few times on the grassroots gathering, is the buzz. And the buzz came about because we have lots of organisations across the country that we work with, lots of enterprises that were community-based. And when lockdown happened, there was a danger that lots of people who access those were suddenly going to be at sea with no access to this. So what we've done at Community Catalyst is work closely with them to provide a platform on Facebook and also on our Small Good Stuff website, where they could provide these services where possible in a video format. So each week a little a little post goes out saying next week we've got one here. Monday a scarf, not quite sure what that was for, a ribbon, I think with some kind of dancing was needed. On Tuesday it was some basic art equipment, and on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday it was just yourself. And those sessions run as one video every day where these really small enterprises that we're working with could still put out there what they were doing in the community face-to-face setting on a video platform. And it's been really, really well received. The feedback we've had from people about the difference it's made to them, and having an interactive aspect where they could comment on the posts has been really, really heartwarming to hear how much it's meant to people during lockdown. In terms of co-production across the Rochdale Borough, when I first started in this role, I was really keen to make sure I wasn't reinventing the wheel, I wasn't treading any toes, that I was being really mindful it was already out there working well, but also looking at what the gaps might be and how we could work with existing entrepreneurs and enterprises and existing third sector organisations to make sure those connections were really robust and that we were all working together. I wasn't interested in going out there and trying to do something different if it was going to be for different sake. It had to work for people, it had to be what people wanted, it had to play to people's strengths, and it had to be fit for purpose and sustainable. And the only way I felt I could do that was by making those connections with lots of different people and talking, my favourite pastime, to anyone and everyone who would listen to me and engage with me. When I started then working with local entrepreneurs and enterprises, I've really encouraged them to co-produce what they do as much as they can through things like taster sessions. So Erica here in the picture came along to an event at the hospital a few months back where we shared with people what she did, what we do, what I was able to provide, and get people talking about whether they're a professional or a service user, what is it they wanted, what did they need, what were they hearing on the ground, and for Erica to be responsive and flexible to that. And it was really, really useful event to go to. I have someone I'm working with who is doing Meals on Wheels kind of type service, and I really encouraged her to get feedback from the people she knew would be accessing the service she's providing. So she wanted to know what were the portion sizes needed. Was she doing too big? Were they too small? What was the right portion size? What meals did they want? What did the names of the meals mean to them? Did they mean anything, or were they confusing and would it put them off? And to kind of really listen to what they wanted. And then kind of going forward, I'm really kind of, I bang on a lot about this to people that we work with, about it's really important to get that continual feedback on the service or the session you provide. You need to keep listening to people. Is it still working? Is it still what they want? Are you still including them about what it should look like to make sure it is sustainable? And I'm quite proud of how Erica and Jimmy and Tracy and everyone I'm working with are doing this. They are being responsive, they are checking in and co-producing it on an ongoing basis. Co-production doesn't stop when the service starts. Co-production is just part of what you should be doing. So final word is a quote from my manager, is that there's no real one way of bringing co-production to life. Every way leads somewhere great though. So if you are worried about co-producing services, I would say just go for it, give it a go, because it's good for people, it's good for entrepreneurs, it's good for communities, and it's good overall for society. So just give it a go for it. And that's me and my details. And hopefully you're all still awake and that was useful.